Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for Stamp and Stencil Savvy. And this hop is organized by Brianna from Love My Life on Paper. And there are a whole bunch of very talented and quite lovely scrapbookers who take part in this hop every month. The prompt for this month is watercolors and stamping. And so I probably could have stamped and then used some watercolors to color in the outlines, but I decided instead to try this out. I saw Missy Whidden doing this years and years ago, and I always wanted to try it, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity. I took some clear stamps that I had in my stash, and then I used some watercolors. These are liquid watercolors, and I dipped my stamps into the watercolors and I stamped that way. I'm using some watercolor paper. This is just really inexpensive paper that I had in my stash. And I'm also using some Dr. P.H. Martin's transparent watercolors. I have had these watercolors for like probably more than 30 years, and I really don't use them too often, but this was the perfect occasion to use them. I also used two different stamp sets that I have in my stash. I used a Vicki Boutin stamp set called Happy Thoughts that was gifted to me by Pam of my Creative Scrapbook, and I absolutely love these. I also picked up some stamps at a Sizzix sale that they had fairly recently, and this stamp set is called Painted Florals. So I put the watercolors out on my glass mat, and in some cases, I added some water to the watercolors. In some cases, I sprayed some water onto my stamp. I did both in some cases. I used one color or I mixed two colors together, but I found it was really difficult to repeat successes. So there would be times that I would try something out and I thought, oh, this came really good. I'm going to try to do the same thing. And then I found it was really difficult to do the same thing repeatedly. So I have a whole variety of results. You could see some came out really light and some came out a little bit darker. And this is certainly not everybody's cup of tea. I feel like the watercolors were a little bit difficult to control, as I mentioned, but I did get quite a few really nice images when all is said and done. So I was overall happy with these results, and I thought that this created kind of a cool painterly effect that would be really difficult to get any other way. The larger flowers that look a little bit more like outlines, those are the Vicki Boutin stamps. And then there are some that are just flat. There's a medium and a small version, or very similar flowers. Those are the Sizzix stamps. And I actually really liked the way those came out a lot, those Sizzix ones where it was just a flat surface. I thought those definitely looked like they were painted with watercolors rather than stamped. And although I love all of my stamps and I really like clear stamps a lot, I find that I'm constantly losing them. I lost the stamp that I'm using right now, and I looked high and low and I could not find it anywhere. I was looking to see if it got stuck to anything, if it was on the floor, if it was stuck to furniture, to my clothes. I could not find it, and I was really upset. And then I looked to see how much it would cost to buy a new set of stamps, and it was a lot more than what I paid for it. So I was really happy when I finally opened a drawer that's right under where I work and the stamp was sitting in there. Since I have so many flowers, I thought that it would be a good idea to stamp a decent number of leaves to go along with them. And I'm using the leaf die that was in the Vicki Boutin stamp set. And the leaves were the only thing that I used the accompanying dies to cut out. Everything else I cut out by hand. I left a small border of the watercolor paper around the outside of each of the flowers. I just thought it would be better to kind of lean into the irregularities of the flowers by fussy cutting them out rather than having a die that the watercolor might not match the shape of. I hope that that makes sense. And then just for these few orange flowers, I thought I would give it a try of adding some watercolor paint with a brush on top of what I stamped. And I like the way these orange flowers came too. So these are all of my flowers after I stamped them and cut them out. You can see I went a little overboard, but that was just because I was doing so much experimenting, and actually having a pretty good time doing it. So I went through all of the flowers and I picked out a number of them that I thought I would use on my layout, and I did end up using most of these flowers that I put off to the side. So then I gathered up all of the leftovers, and I definitely plan to use these on another layout. I really like them, and I hopefully can use them soon before I forget about them. Now I'm working on my background. So to make this background, I use my Silhouette Cameo, and I cut a heart out of a piece of pink pattern paper from My Mind's Eye. It's a collection called Collectible. And then I cut out another heart from this piece of wood grain paper. This is a piece of paper that I got from a creative reuse center, so I don't know the manufacturer, and I don't even think it was made for scrapbooking. It's slightly smaller than 12 inches wide, but that ended up being just fine with me. And you can see that the opening in the wood grain's a little bit bigger, so that when I layer the wood grain heart on top of the pink heart, you'll be able to see a pink border all around the inside of the wood grain heart. And off camera, I gutted this heart from the piece of pattern paper that it was on because I found that I didn't properly center the hearts in the pages. So I wanted there to be a pink border all around the outside of this heart. But as I said, it wasn't centered correctly. So I had to detach that piece of paper, and then that way I would be able to center the wood grain heart on top of this mat. I hope that makes sense, but it had to do with how I didn't quite figure all the things out correctly, but sometimes you can go back later and figure things out. So I am adding some adhesive to the edge of the paper, and now I'm able to center my heart on that mat, or pretty close to center it. I did find that it was a little tricky to work with this paper because that wood grain paper was super, super thin, much thinner than the scrapbooking papers that I'm used to working with, but it all worked out fine in the end. I just find it a little bit hard sometimes to work with all of these layered pieces of paper in order to get everything looking just right. So then I added more adhesive to the back of my hearts, and now I'm centering both of these papers, the wood grain and the pink paper, on top of a yellow paper. So you could see a little bit around the outside, and you can also see yellow in the center of the heart. And I did use a little bit of Distress ink and Vintage Photo to ink the edges of all of those layers of paper. And then I forgot to mention that the yellow paper is also from the My Mind's Eye collectible collection, which is a really old collection, and I'm running low on it, and I'm a little sad about it, but I have to remember I have so many pieces of scrapbooking paper that I could use. But I think some of these older collections become kind of go-tos that I like to have available, but I have to kind of break away from that because I need to have some room in my scrapbooking room and not keep restocking old papers. So now I'm taking all of my flowers, the ones that I had separated out of the larger group, and I am putting a cluster in the upper left-hand corner and another one in the lower right-hand corner. And as I mentioned, these watercolors are so old, I don't even know if they're still made, but I will put the names of the colors that I use in the description box. I really liked the combination of pinks and yellows and oranges. I just think it's a really pretty color palette. And I don't know if I ever told this story before, but those watercolors were purchased by me when I was going to the Fashion Institute of Technology in Manhattan, and I was there as an illustration major. I only stayed for 2 years because I'd actually already gone to 4 years of college, but I just really wanted to go to school and learn a little bit about art since I had a much more practical major. But I purchased these from, I remember not what they look like, but I do remember it was a girl and a guy, and they used to be selling art supplies all the time. They would only have one thing each day, and they would sell them to, anybody who wanted to buy them. But I was a little bit older and I was working my way through school. I had a job that I worked at a lot, so I had a bit of disposable income that a lot of the younger students didn't have. So I was always so excited. They always had something really cool. And I remember they had these inks, and I just thought they were so amazing. I got them for a good price. And it didn't dawn on me till like many, many years later that there was probably something a little like nefarious about the source of where they got these art supplies from. In retrospect, the whole thing seems kind of fishy, but at the time I was so innocent and so young, it never dawned on me that somebody might do something like that. So I could be totally wrong about that, but every time I take these out, I always think about how I purchased them and how I was so, oblivious to where they possibly could have come from. Once I had all the flowers and leaves where I wanted them, I quickly attached them down so I didn't end up messing up the clusters. And then I added the title Hello. That's thicker from one of the many title packs that I have. I thought that color went really well with the colors of the flowers. And now I'm using some of the smaller flowers to add some embellishments all around the title. Some of the flowers I use to cover up some of the flowers that are on either end of this piece of chipboard, just because the colors didn't go along with the colors that are in the layout. I also have a photo of my daughter Danielle and one of her good friends from many years ago, and I have matted that on some white paper, and then I matted it again on some orange paper from that same My Mind's Eye collection. I've been trying to use up some of the butterflies in my stash. This is a sheet of stickers from the Dollar Tree or Crafter's Square brand. There were lots of blue butterflies, but there were also some that had similar tones and colors to the flowers that I have. So I picked just those butterflies out and I put them in a couple of different spots around the layout. And then I always like to have my photo corners. I don't know what it is with me. If I don't have photo corners on most of my layouts, I feel like it's a little unfinished looking. So I use my EK Success photo corner punch and punched out 4 photo corners, inked the edges, and then I attach them down to my photo. And I was realizing that I bought so many packs of thicker titles when I used to go shopping at Tuesday Morning. They always seem to have those at a really great price, and I really don't use them as much as I should. So I'm trying to keep in mind that I have those titles, and I'm going to try to use them on my upcoming layout. They're very handy to have. I just always forget to use them. I love to add pearls and jewels and gems to my layouts. For this layout, I thought I had a lot going on color-wise, so I thought it would be great to use something that's, I don't want to say neutral because these are not neutral, but they don't add a new color. They're iridescent dots. They're from Hobby Lobby. I don't know if they still carry them, but I really like the way they're iridescent, so I bought a whole bunch of them back in the day. And they came in 3 different sizes, so I used all 3 different sizes on my flowers. I also used some really, really tiny iridescent jewels. Those are slightly faceted around the edge, so I thought that it would be nice to combine those smaller jewels since they're much smaller than any of those Hobby Lobby jewels that I used. I always think that it looks better to have jewels in a lot of different sizes rather than just one size. I just think it's a little bit more interesting, and especially that I have flowers in all these different sizes on the layout. Now I kind of feel like it's the finishing touches stage of the layout. I wanted to add a little bit of stitching. I really like to add stitching when I have cut files. I just add a little bit on this layout, and since I did it at the end, I didn't have to do a lot of stitching that was going to get covered up, so it really didn't take me very long. I use this little pokey tool that I have, and there's a mat that I put under my layout, and then I use some white embroidery thread and I stitch just around that right hand side of the heart, and then I put a little bit of stitching at the bottom. I wanted to make sure that you could see the bottom of the heart because I didn't want to lose the shape of the heart. I have so many flowers and then the photo that are kind of covering up aspects or parts of the heart, and so you'll see later on I clear a little bit of space on the bottom. I move some of the flowers away so you can see the tip of the heart, and I think that just kind of makes it very clear that this is a heart shape. And you can see here that I'm adding some stitching. I'm just using the very simple back stitch, and this really didn't take too long. Usually the stitching takes me forever, but this was a quick one. So here's another set of those thickers that I had in my stash. I found I had a little sticker that said good vibes. So now the title is Hello Good Vibes. It just seemed like there was something missing in that spot, and I thought that was a good way to both add to the title and add something in that area. I wanted to add a few leaves around the flowers by the title, and I thought the branches were a little bit too big for those smaller flowers, so I cut one of the branches into pieces and I placed those around the flowers by the word hello. Then I use one of my favorite sets of dies. It's by Phill Martin. It's a Sentimentally Yours Berry Branches die, or die set, I should say. And I use the smaller dies to cut out some white little sprays, and I'm tucking those into the floral clusters. And I like the way these little branches add some white back into these very colorful clusters. They also add a different element and a different size element. And there are many other die sets that are similar to this, but I was using this die set at a crop. A good friend of mine had it, and I just had to have it. So she helped me to message someone on Facebook who could help me with getting it shipped to the United States, because it is generally only sold in England. And I am actually really happy that I went through those few extra steps, because this is one of my most used and favorite die sets. But as I said, if you're interested in this shape, in having this kind of die cut in your layouts, you can definitely find similar dies. I really just want to have small accents of these branches. They're much bigger, but I cut them into smaller pieces so that I could put little wisps of them all around the floral clusters. And here I'm using my scissors to help me position them on the page. Once I had all of these little branches where I wanted them, I took my gel glue and I went around the layout, and anything that wasn't already glued down or didn't look like it was attached well, I glued it down to the background, and that was the very last touch. And here are a couple of close-ups. I sincerely think that you will enjoy checking out the playlist for this hop. The link is in the description box. There are so many scrapbookers using stamps in so many great ways. I'm looking forward to checking out all the videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.